Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're kicking off 2026 by talking about nuclear power and taking a close look at the much discussed and much anticipated small modular reactor program being developed by Rolls Royce SMR. My guest today is Ruth Todd CBE, Rolls Royce SMR's Operations and Supply Chain Director, the person charged with turning this long-standing ambition into a deliverable reality. And having led the UK's hugely successful COVID vaccine task force back in 2020-2021 and worked on High Speed 2, well, Ruth is no stranger to a massive challenge. Certainly delivering new nuclear in the UK is up there in the league table of major challenges. As a recent Fingleton review put it, the sector is facing strategic failure at the moment of national importance. And we're certainly at a moment of profound transition. The global energy system is under strain from rising prices, geopolitical uncertainty and the urgent need to decarbonise. But it is also true that the UK government has responded with one of the most ambitious interventions in its energy history. Major investment in Sizewell C, fusion research and crucially £2.5 billion to accelerate the development and deployment of SMRs. At the heart of this renewed ambition for a new golden age of nuclear energy is the Rolls Royce Small Modular Reactor programme, described as the UK's first domestic nuclear technology in more than 20 years and designed to provide stable, affordable, emissions-free energy for at least 6 decades. Rolls Royce SMR's approach uses factory-built modules, a standardised design and a turnkey engineering, manufacture and assembly model which aims to reduce the cost and delivery challenges that have plagued traditional large-scale nuclear projects, and it has the go-ahead to deploy the first 3 SMRs at Wilfra in Anglesey. Each will be capable of powering a million homes with a design that is up to 18 months ahead of any competitor in European regulatory process, which arguably means that Rolls-Royce SMR now sits at the forefront of what could become one of the country's most significant green export industries and the key to thousands of new skilled jobs and long-lasting local legacy. It's certainly an exciting moment, so let's hear more. Ruth, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Anthony, thank you very much for inviting me. What an introduction. I've got a lot to live up to.
Well, I try and set the scene, but let's start, Ruth. Let's start with the basics. So give us in your words, what is an SMR? What are the defining characteristics? And why does the Rolls-Royce model stand out within this fast-emerging global landscape?
Sure. So the clue's in the name, small modular reactor. Small, we're actually kind of on the upside of small, 470 megawatts of energy. So that's half a gig compared to what's 1.3, 1.4 in some of the bigger plants. So there's a small bit. Modular, and that is our kind of big USP as Rolls-Royce SMR. We are building a plant out of Lego bricks. So everything we can, we are obsessively designing for manufacture, designing for construction, designing for logistics. And so the modular element for us is that the plant is predominantly built of elements that can be put together on site and hooked up on site, but are built in factory conditions. So they're easy to transport and then easy for us to assemble when it gets to site. All relatively. This is still a nuclear power plant. I'm not underlying its complexity.
No, but there was a feeling when it was first discussed that these would come on the back of lorries and they would sit at the end of someone's road and you would power a local town. But they're bigger than that. They're kind of a quarter of the size, perhaps, of a standard nuclear power station.
I think ours has probably got 50,000 modules in it, and then a good slug of normal construction works as well. So it's not. And materials. There's obviously some things that you don't modularize in the build. So yeah, it is modular.
Yeah. So how significant is it for the UK to have its own domestic nuclear technology for the first time in 20 years? As I said, how does that? What does that enable strategically for the UK?
Well, it's a game changer really for the UK and more broadly. So we are going to be creating lots of high quality long-term jobs. The factory build element means that you're doing those in places that are stable, which means it's a good opportunity to move away from the transient workforces that we have on many construction sites. We'll be transforming the communities we operate in. And I guess that's those skilled jobs together with this reactor, the 470 megawatts of energy, that reactor there that's built on very normal technologies, gives us the opportunity to kind of get ahead of everyone else in the world. We're very far through the GDA process, the generic design assessment process. We believe our product to be possible to regulate, and that allows us to position ourselves well, not only for the UK, but exporting much more broadly than that.
So how does the summer spending reviews commitment, I mentioned the £2.5 billion public investment in SMR technology, how does it help you?
Oh, it's a major boost. I mean, the government putting its money where its mouth is so welcomed. When we look at that money, it will enable the start of the build. Now, it's clearly not going to cover all 3 plants, and I don't want anyone to think that that's the truth, but it gets us through a lot of the stage 1 works. It gets us through that early work and allows us to be ready to start building the first plants.
So it gives the private sector confidence to come in with more money to underpin the rest of the development.
Well, it de-risks it, doesn't it? And I guess that there'll be a lot of other things that GBEN will be spending that money on too. It won't only be with us.
Yeah.
So you can see it being an enabler for them to make sure that the proposition that government wants to make sure it gains funding through is strong.
Yeah. I want to mention the recent review of the nuclear sector by John Fingleton, which was out in December. I mean, that did set out a picture of strategic failure and branded the UK as one of the most expensive and slowest places in the world to deliver nuclear projects. I mean, is he right?
100% he's right, I'm afraid. It's awful, isn't it? We've done a lot of studies around the world, and even where you see traditional stick build in other nations, they're doing it more effectively than we are. So we have some things to prove. And I think I'm a big fan of Bent Fleedberg's How Big Things Get Done, his book. And he talks about needing a disruptor in the sector and talks about modularisation probably being the route to that disruption. And here we are offering that. The big thing, and it's things that all of us who've done big programs are used to. If you don't get the planning right, if you don't mature the design enough before you get started, then you are inevitably making it harder. If you design it so that a lot of the work has to be done on site, even if they're blocks that you're putting together, that makes incredible complexity. So our attitude has been to use the power of Rolls Royce's engineering capability and its manufacturing know-how and bring that to an infrastructure, a piece of complex infrastructure, and try and make the job of putting it together much simpler. And that's why I'm so excited about doing this job, because my manufacturing background sort of joined together with my recent experience of working on some really cool infrastructure programs. It's everything that everybody moans about has been put right in the design we start with. And I'm so excited about, therefore, realising that dream. Yeah,
well, as James Stewart put it in his review of the HS2 project, projects don't go wrong, they start wrong. And I suppose your job right now is to make sure that this particular programme starts right. I mean, we got calls to triple global nuclear power capacity by 2050. Where do you see the UK's competitive advantages? I mean, how real is the opportunity for SMRs to become that major export industry that really kind of once and for all makes nuclear power delivery easier?
So we're well placed right now because we already have orders in both the UK and in the Czech Republic. So that's a good start. And we're down selected in Sweden. So the advantage of that when we talk about modular is that you need to have a pipeline in order to be able to realise the factory ideals sat behind it. So the product that we've created and the pipeline that's starting to emerge will then support us when it comes to delivering what the UK wants. And we know that they want 3 to start with. We know the site will take up to 8. And we know that GBN have aspirations of a fleet that could be up to 15 or more. We also know the number of sites in the UK and that, the potential here is massive. So that realising each of these orders and pulling them off will open the door, I think, to more and more nations getting behind what we're doing.
I'm always interested also, Ruth, in that, is there a tension between what you're trying to do with the SMR programme and what Julia Pike and Nigel Cann are doing at Sizewell C, for instance, or the guys at Hinkley Point with these major mega projects, which are associated in many ways with long delays and cost overruns that that typically come with those projects. How do you see yourself? Are you in competition with them, or are you all part of the same team, which is trying to drag the nuclear sector, really into a new era, as I say, a golden age?
Well, look, so I regularly have dinner with the guys at Sizewell. We are talking to each other, of course we are. I think where we recognise the conflict is probably in skills and capacity. So that's where that capacity concern is something that across the world, actually, we need to keep an eye on, not just the UK. Nuclear is growing in a number of nations. And consequently, if you look across Europe and in the US, that consumption of skills and consumption of capacity within the supply chain probably is the area where I worry most. Sizewell's a clear step up from Hinkley, and I think, some really fantastic innovation happening there. But capacity and skills are the two that I would call out as ones where not in conflict, but we need to be really mindful of each other.
Yeah, to make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes, and I suppose you got to make sure your programs are actually interlaced with each other rather than doubling up. But let's talk a bit about where you are right now on the SMR project. Well, my recent interview with Tim Stone, who's a non-exec director of Great British Energy Nuclear, he emphasised that getting delivery of the first SMR right was more important than getting it early. I mean, is that a kind of concept that you're going through right now? Everyone wants it tomorrow, but you've got to make sure that you get it right.
So we talk about build certainty, and it's absolutely key that we get it on right, on time and on budget. So we completely concur with that. The first one is likely to take longer. We're not talking large plant length of time, but it will take longer, and then we'll drive down through our learning each plant that we do. You saw it at Baraka. We've seen it in other nations they've done where they've had repeatable build. You see it a lot in oil and gas, where you see repeatable build. Explored some LNG facilities out in the US only last year, and that's kind of commonplace, and the repeatability is really helpful to you in doing that. But the first one will be a bit longer, I'm sure.
Yeah. So in terms of dates then, Ruth, what's in your mind for delivery of the first SMR power to the grid?
We are absolutely preparing for first power on grid mid-30s. Now, we're not the only party that has a say in that, but we are. All our plans, all of our readiness, all of our performance and expectation is mid-30s power on grid.
Yeah. Okay.
So it won't be on us if it's not.
So when will you get more specific about when actually that date comes then?
Well, I guess when we're getting close to the date. So when we're in the commissioning phase, we'll feel more confident once we're through the prime parts of the build, where the build certainty comes to bear. Then we'll feel more confident, and that confidence will grow over time. At the moment, we've got to talk in those ranges because it would be crazy, as we know with other big programs. You put a date in the public domain, and everybody then gets very disappointed when that date's not met. And so you end up being ridiculously conservative, and then that date stops driving the program. So you've got to balance those things so you get the behaviour set right, but you also don't disappoint people.
Well, you mentioned you've completed, is it step 2 of the generic design assessment? Mm-hmm. Fingleton highlighted the challenge of systemic regulatory failure and fragmented oversight. I mean, what for you have been the biggest technical, I suppose, or regulatory hurdle so far, and what remains ahead for you?
Hurdles are kind of hard to describe because I don't think we're in that space. We've had a really positive engagement with the regulator today. We have some differences of our plant that are just worth exploring. So we have a generic design, and that's what's going through the regulatory process. But obviously each application will vary from that, and then we need to go through site-specific licensing process and get our design assured for each individual site from all the normal conditions. Things like the emergency planning zones all vary, seismic conditions may be different, and so on. So we're very, very mindful of that. We are deep in the middle of step 3 at the moment, and things are going well. We are doing all that detailed work that puts the detail behind the safety, security, and environmental aspects of our product. We're I can't call it hurdles. We have the challenge of multiple regulators. That's interesting, and we've been quite careful about making sure that a number of regulators have been engaged from the outset. But our focus is right now on GDA.
But of course, international momentum is strong. And you mentioned commitments to use your technology in the Czech Republic, potential deployments in Sweden, I think. I mean, how does that progress overseas support or maybe even complicate the UK rollout? Yeah,
you could easily think that, couldn't you? It strengthens it. Think of factory build. You can't just put one product through a factory. You need to have continuity if you're going to make it.
Yeah, so it's pipeline. It's building that pipeline.
It's pipeline. Yeah. And if we really want to look at short lead times, then our supply chain needs to have certainty, and it doesn't have that when we just do one build at a time. So it's for us, it's really important that scale up happens. Yeah, it's interesting. We've done some early studies, and I may change my numbers on this, but right now we look at a lot of the jobs on site, even site works, around 9 months at a time. So having an ongoing order book means that all those skills you create have enduring work to perform, even on site as well as within factory.
Yeah.
So for us, it strengthens it and makes it easier. Yes, getting the momentum going for the first ones is going to be tough. I call it the hard yards. I think those early plants are going to be really, really hard work. But the idea of being in a world of series production, to use my automotive terminology, that I think is the advantage we'll bring to nuclear. And then we'll really see short lead times, costs suppressed, and we'll really get that certainty kind of inherent in everything that we do.
I get the feeling whenever I speak to you in the past about your career and the things you've been working on, that learning lessons from what happens is really, really important. I mean, what do you think you've learnt during the early phases of design, procurement and regulatory engagement on this project, on this programme, that will help shape the way you deliver the first UK units? I mean, are you overcoming this culture that Fingleton highlights of disproportionate risk aversion, for instance, in the sector and across the wider public towards the nuclear? What are you learning?
Well, so maturity of design before we get started, no surprise I'd pull that one out, is there. Building cost and schedule certainty by having long-term arrangements with our supply chain, and that they're much more embedded in our long-term thinking. They're doing a lot of the work, detailed design work with us. So had some fantastic conversations recently where suppliers have gone, "Oh, we've never been asked to do this before. Did you know that if you do this, it makes it easier to build the plant?" We're like, well, yeah, cool. Does it change the performance? Are any of the requirements not met? Okay, well, let's look at that. So there's a real opportunity by having longevity there, I think. We're doing a lot of the other thing, and I guess this is because we're as a company, we are product oriented. We're doing a huge amount of readiness work and doing prototyping. So I have modules in build in Sheffield at the moment that we are then practicing with. We have some fantastic work going on the complex welding we need to do, so that when we come to site, we've got a very clear method. We're not making things up on the hoof. Yeah. All the things that are hard, we've given a good slug of time to rehearsing and making sure that when we get to site, we're burning down some of that risk. And then clearly when we look at the local content and skills development, that pipeline of people that are going to support us over time, we're making sure they're in place too. So there's a whole load of stuff that you look around big projects, and both in the product world. So some of I was on the submarine program before the vaccines world, and then look across to the work on infrastructure. There's so much learning that everybody says the same thing. Like, can't we learn from that then? Let's do the obvious stuff.
Well, it's interesting because I recently spoke to the team at the new hospital program, the Hospital 2.0, which is saying exactly the same kind of sentiments that you're saying there. Really focusing on what the product is and what you're actually going to be using it for. I want to delve into a bit more about your background and the work you did there. But first, just finish off around what you're doing right now. You've had the Wilfra site committed by the government for the first SMR deployment. What made that the right location for you then, and how do you plan to build the kind of long-term community partnerships that will last, centuries long for that kind of programme? Well,
with my Welsh heritage, personally, I'm rather pleased. But, it's a great site, and it's probably arguably the best site in Europe you could choose. It's set up for success, and the site itself has the clearest route to build, I think, of any that you could pick. It's a long commitment to Wilfra, so we need to be very mindful that our commitment there is going to affect that community for a long time. But I think for us, it's a really great location. It's a really good environment to be building in, environment physically and with the community around it. And consequently, it's for us, it's a great step.
And is it perhaps getting the decision now? Is that a sign that we are actually getting clear national leadership of the kind that was called for in the latest review?
Well, I think you have to say the GBEN team and Simon Bowen have given leadership, something we're all wanting previously. We're seeing it across government, aren't we? The enthusiasm and excitement, just you feel like you've got a pipeline. The Conservative government got started, but this Labour government is really supporting us going forward. So, I think we're starting to see that that certainty there. We just have to make sure, as with all infrastructure, that determination stays. The pipeline is the key thing for all of us in infrastructure, isn't it? Knowing what's coming next.
Yeah, certainly the Prime Minister made a speech recently, didn't he? Really underlining the commitment of the government to changing the fact that, as I said at the start, that Britain is the most expensive place. It's got to change, and we need to do that as part of the industrial strategy. And having that kind of leadership, I suppose, is key to it. Let's dig a bit deeper into the approach that you're adopting there at Rolls Royce in a moment. But a bit about you first, Ruth. You were awarded CBE in June for your work on the UK's vaccine programme as head of the task force. This role came, of course, after a huge, and congratulations, by the way, on the work you did there, certainly game-changing for the UK. But the role came after a hugely successful career in defence and automotive manufacturing. What made the relatively short role on the task force, the vaccine task force, so special?
Well, I guess the imperative, you always have to start there. I mean, all of us at that time didn't know the way forward, did we? We were sat at home each night watching the news, feeling terrified, not sure whether we wanted to go out. And it's 5 years. So it was 5 years on the 8th of December that we vaccinated Margaret Keenan in Coventry.
Wow.
So, we're having a celebration in January just to mark that moment, because it seems, in some ways, it seems no time ago, and in other ways, we've forgotten a lot about it, haven't we?
Yeah, sort of a different world, isn't it, when you think back?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we weren't doing Teams back then very much, were we? And here we are, we do everything on Teams. So what made it special, I think, was the team. So we had a very multi-disciplinary team. So we had industry, civil servants, and a number of sort of consultancy and interims. We just brought together the skills that we needed, and that capability that we created, there was never a moment where you couldn't turn to someone, or our supply chain turned to our team. So we were supporting the supply chain, lots of supplier management. So we were working absolutely hand in glove with the supply chain. There were no boundaries, because everybody was trying to get it done as quickly as possible, and getting what's normally a 10-year development cycle down to 10 months was one of the things that we'd all sit back and reflect. And part of that was obvious stuff. We did lots of lean engineering. I'm a Six Sigma black belt. The boredom they all felt when I go, can you find another day? Can you find another hour out of each thing? Which was, let's turn that from being letters to emails, was one of the things we did around the regulatory process. Madness, but that took out 9 months. Through to knowing that when we had problems, somebody knew somebody who could help us solve that problem, whether it was technical, whether it was a supply chain issue. And so we were really collaborative, and we didn't have, lots of information before we started. We were placing bets, weren't we? So some things you wouldn't want to take across. We were placing bets against a number of different vaccines. No one knew which one would be first. But then we started to see the route forward, and scale up then became the challenge. So it was really exciting times.
It's interesting. What you're saying is that everyone was pulling in the same direction,
100%.
And everyone really had a single goal in mind that they really were fixated on achieving. And I suppose you've got a program now which you're running in the nuclear sector. How does that compare in terms of scale and scale of challenge to the vaccine task force? And are you managing to get that similar kind of feeling of everybody across the entire supply chain going in the same direction?
So look, I have two heuristics that I think are really important. The first is collaborate. So we have to work together, whoever we are. And collaboration, I don't think, this expression I use, it's not pink and fluffy. It means you have open and honest conversations, and you talk about the difficult things as well as the things that are going well. And the other is, if you can see it, you can sort it. And I think that openness and being prepared to deal with things that could be in our way, manage the hell out of the risk is another one. Those requirements on all of us are part of what we are trying to do at Rolls Royce SMR. We recognise ourselves as the head of an enterprise, but the enterprise is made up of a community of suppliers and partners who will help us be successful. And like I said earlier, one of the cool finds the other week was when we went to one of our suppliers, have a look at, we want you to supply this, and we do the detailed design. And went, well, did you know that you could do something differently and you get a different outcome? Or do you know that you could do this and it will be easier to do on site? And those conversations are the ones that will make us successful, aren't they?
Well, after the vaccine task force, of course, you moved to become commercial director on HS2. And politics aside, because there's been a lot said and a lot written about the politics of HS2, I mean, how do you reflect on that project in terms of its management and its delivery?
Yeah, I mean, I say I went from the nation's most loved programme to the one that divides the nation. And it's so true. I mean, look, that programme was fantastic. It is enormous. And you have to remember, with the number of different work sites, it's hard always to see either end of it. And the reliance on the supply chain to support that programme, and the endeavour of the 30,000 people who are working every day, is something that you could never fail but be stunned by. I also live right by the trace, so I see it today, and I see it changing. I see the level of progress all the time.
Yeah. Which bit of the route do you live near?
Well, I'm it's South Warwickshire, so yeah, the middle part. Yeah, we're between EKFB and Balfour Beatty's. Balfour Beatty Vancy's bit, so right in the middle there. So I see along it, and I take my horse to lots of different directions along it too, so I cross it regularly. But yeah, so I think in terms of the programme, there's a lot of good stuff that we must never lose. Some of the innovations are going to change construction forever. some of the delivery mechanisms and the way in which delivery happened are going to change our approach to delivery forever. But it's come with a very big price tag. It's come with a lot of political uncertainty, and it's made it really hard, I think, to see the other end of. And I have, huge respect for Mark Wilde as he picks up the reins and takes the programme on to its next steps.
Yeah, wherever that is. You spent a large part of your early career in the automotive sector with Land Rover, Rover Group, MG, returned to JLR in 2014 for a couple of years. And we constantly hear in infrastructure, right back to 1994 Latham and 98 Egan Review, how far ahead automotive and aerospace are compared to construction and infrastructure. I mean, I was talking, as I say, of the folks at Hospital 2.0, the new hospital program. We were talking maybe finally we're going to get some of the reality of what was talked about by Egan and Latham. I mean, are we still that far behind the automotive and aerospace sector when it comes to delivery of projects?
I'm afraid so, yeah. And I guess I'll talk specifically about construction and infrastructure rather than the wider nuclear supply chain, because I think I can say that we've got a long way to go across that supply chain as well, because it's not just the works on site that matter. For us, predominantly, we are in that factory build situation, but we have work to do there too. There's lots of good signs, but we get caught up on elements of what the automotive sector's built on. We don't talk platform engineering, we talk modularization, where platform engineering is what drove modularization in the automotive sector, because you went, right, how do I create a common car that I can then provide customer variety of? Oh, we need to do it in a way that's easy to put it together. That leads us to modular. So we have some philosophical differences. I think it was one of your podcasts I heard where we talked about production control. I can't remember who it was who did it. I thought there was a lot of truth in what was said on that particular episode, because there are lots of ingredients that are now there, but bringing them together so that it's a holistic system and just the way you do things, which both aerospace and automotive just have. It's inherent. Yeah. We've got a way to go. So the ingredients are on their way, but we haven't baked our cake yet.
Yeah. It sounds like the one with Paul Turner.
Yeah, I think it could be.
I've mentioned the NHS and New Hospital programme, but of course you were there as well. You've been in that programme, the £37 billion programme.
Apparently I get around, yeah.
But they are embracing this industrial design. What did you tell them then?
So my role there was to work out how we address industry. So when you're asking a new question in an industry, and there's so many parallels between New Hospital programme and what we're doing at Rolls Royce SMR, it's untrue. This cultural change that you need to drive, the ingredients that make a difference to industry, those are the things that I was starting to help the team collate together so that they had a coherent message to give to industry to encourage that change. And I think there's so many good things going to come out of that programme. It's a really both an exciting programme, but so full of common sense, so full of just doing the right thing. And of course, Morag Stewart, who's there, is we pass each other. We're in defence together, and I'm sure in her future we'll be doing things that were similar too.
No, well, they certainly. The feeling was that Rolls Royce's game was their loss when I spoke to them. So, but they certainly are ploughing ahead there. So it's a really interesting project. You're based, as you say. Well, I thought you were in Oxfordshire, but you say Warwickshire. You're based.
Yeah, I live on the border. I walk across the border, so you get postcodes in one place and physical in the other. It's kind of a thing.
Well, it's a lovely part of the UK. Are you saying you do a lot of horse riding there? What do you get up to when you're not thinking about nuclear power and programme delivery?
Well, I'm a bit of a country bumpkin. I mean, you should try and watch me cross the road in London. I'm terrified most of the time. So I have two sons who are grown up now. They are the light of my life. They and my husband, I guess, are the biggest part of my family. Is very important. I think that grounding you have is one of the things that allows you to do these more complicated things. My horse is my world, and my kids and my husband all trying to work out who's more important. Probably the dog is more important than the horse, but that's how it rolls in our house. So I'm.
How many horses and how many dogs?
Well, I currently have one horse. I did just sell one, and two dogs.
And what sort of dogs?
Working cockers. Yeah, but everything has high energy in our house. It's a requirement. Yeah, you have to be able to get out and do stuff. We don't do lots of sitting around, that's for sure.
Fair enough. Well, back to the Rolls Royce SMR and its approach to design and delivery. I mean, your design for delivery model is built, as we discussed, around factory fabrication. I think 90% factory fabrication in your case. What for you then from what you've learned in manufacturing and what you've learned in all your other projects, what are the biggest risks that this approach eliminates compared to perhaps traditional nuclear builds?
Yeah, you reduce a lot of uncertainty. So when you look at the works on site, reducing the number of works on site where you are, where there are external conditions that affect your ability to perform. So that's by both taking material off site and building in factories and bringing them to an accepted condition out of the factory, and also by building under our factory on site. We take away an awful lot of those environmental conditions. You create a better working environment. So your ability to attract people to work with you, you've got more stability in that working environment. So you aren't talking about someone coming somewhere for 9 months. They've got a future career. If we're going to build 3 to start with and could build up to 8 at Wilfer, there's a good slug of time there for someone to make it worth someone coming to North Wales who loves the mountains, who wants to get up to Snowdon. And they're like, well, of course I want to be there because I can have a great life and I know where I'm going to go to work every day. That matters to people.
Which is the community legacy which you're trying to create.
Yes.
There. Yeah. But each SMR is essentially, as we discussed, a small pressurized water reactor, and it uses established technology. But you do also have a number of unique innovations in the reactor design. I think you talk about boron-free primary circuits. I mean, is that describable in simple language? But how does it improve safety and operational efficiency?
Well, I'm not a nuclear scientist either, and if any of my colleagues listen to this, I know they will cringe when I talk about it. So we're in the same place there, Anthony. Don't worry about it.
Right.
But I mean, so what we're not using is soluble boron in our coolant, and our reactor relies on the control rods to manage the reaction. So that reduces water consumption. So it's really environmentally helpful, but most importantly, it takes away a very hazardous waste from our reactor. And it's something we understand pretty well as Rolls Royce. So it's a small but important improvement. It's still a very boring reactor. It's the thing that we hear from the regulator regularly, is that this is a very boring solution, which is great because that's what we're trying to do. Our innovation is in the how, not in the what.
Yeah. Well, getting onto that how, you've developed the module development facility within the University of Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. It's Factory 2050 facilities, which I imagine is trying to really get to grips with how you efficiently modularise this kind of assembly. I mean, how do you describe what you're providing there, and how close are you to proving the full modular assembly workflow?
So Xperia is a multi-million-pound manufacturing and testing facility. It does both those things. And the prototype modules we're building are proving the design, both, things like, does that work from a welding perspective? Does that work from a physical perspective? And does it work in terms of achieving its engineering requirement? So it's the proof that comes behind the concepts we got on paper. It also allows us to do a lot of process preparation, so that when we get to site, we've got a suite of instruction manuals. A bit like when you pick up, we keep talking about Lego kits, so I'm going to just do let me do my Lego kit analogy for a second. We've got a design that's like a Lego kit. I wanted it to be a Disney fairy princess castle, but apparently that's not a thing. Among my team, they get across with me when I say that. But it is a really complex thing. It's made up of lots and lots of parts, and it comes with a kit of parts. And that kit of parts comes from a supply chain that we're really confident in and that we've worked with to make sure that what we put together does go together like Lego bricks, and an instruction manual. And building out that instruction manual is the work we do with Xperia and the guys at Sheffield is really important too, because we need to know we're giving that build certainty will come from not just a schedule of build, but in some cases a sequence of activity that will drive the physical assembly operation to the level that we'll say, this is how you conduct this particular weld. So it's a really, obviously you don't do that for everything. That would be pretty difficult to imagine, but that experimentation and the prototyping gives you that certainty when it comes to building. Because
that leads us on to the final point, and it's something you mentioned right at the top, which is around skills and supply chain competence. Because by having those modular units really worked out, it radically changes the number of the different skills you need on site. I mean, what specific capabilities does the UK need to have to just scale up? And how quickly can they be developed? There's a few facts that probably help. A lot of our plant isn't nuclear, so around 60% of our value is non-nuclear. It's normal ISO accredited stuff. So
The work requirement, therefore, is for conventional skills, not those that have that higher capability set. And actually, when we look at the people that we're recruiting probably 40% of our workforce at the moment from non-nuclear backgrounds. So that's really encouraging, isn't it? Because we're trying to, like we said, we're doing this the way we do this, not just what it is that we're trying to innovate on.
This is for the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure that you require, the sheds that you require to build and house the modular stuff.
Well, and the build itself. So the turbine island isn't nuclear, is it? It's that's a conventional piece of work. It's complex, of course, but it's still conventional works. So we are going to need a mix of nuclear skills and those that are more advanced manufacturing, let's call it that, because that's the way in which we're driving this. Lots of them are enabling, a lot of them are at the coalface. Anything from systems engineering, which we're really, both the engineering director and I are very passionate about systems engineering, safety case development, high integrity welding and fabrication, but then there's digital, cybersecurity, and then we're going to need to move to the sort of technicians. The list is long, and there is a good slug of nuclear capability in there, but quantum-wise, we have a real balance of skills we'll be calling upon.
And you've got growing partnerships across Europe. How do those collaborations really strengthen your supply chain and reduce program risk? Is it just a great source to bring people into the country, or is it a source of learning? I mean, how do you use those partnerships?
I think that we are leveraging them pretty strongly. So we have in each country we're working in, there's also capability that we're calling upon. So we talked about the UK a little bit. Perhaps I should look outside the UK for a moment. In the Czech Republic, one of the CHES companies that we're working with and on their own merit is UJV Res. We've just signed an MOU with them, and they've got 60 years of nuclear engineering. Some of their testing capability is fabulous. Similar capability in Sweden. We've got international companies we're working with like Siemens Energy, BWXT. They are bringing competence and capability from around the world. So the collaborations from a customer perspective are then flowing into the supply chains. And we say quite openly that those first movers, those countries that choose to place orders with us first, will see benefit, because we'll leverage the UK supply chain, we'll leverage the Czech supply chain. And should we be successful in Sweden, you'd expect that same benefit to that nation too.
Yeah, interesting time, because you've also launched a major apprenticeship and workforce program. I mean, how do you ensure that these programs that you're creating and those relationships are creating not only new skills but also long-term career pathways? We talked about the fact that you need to make sure that this is a community embedded in the community, but the sector is prone to this boom and bust. Getting the skills up and ready, then the pipeline disappears. How do you ensure that doesn't happen this time round?
I mean, I guess it's kind of in the design again, isn't it? Because we're building multiple plants over a period of time. We're not doing a single plant, then going somewhere completely different. And the factory build bit helps too, because you're taking probably, 70, 80% of the value and making sure it can happen in a consistent location. So I think it's embedded in the design of our plant that we are creating and allowing ourselves, therefore, to focus on sustainability of careers. So in the design.
But you also presumably saying that, well, if the UK isn't going to be seeing this program through, seeing this golden age of nuclear through, then there will be opportunities elsewhere that will take this program that you're developing.
Well, we're expecting export. So yeah, if companies are working with us, and obviously there are some things that are local, you can't, take someone who's excavating and port them to a different country. That doesn't quite work. But when we look at the product itself, the product side of it, then there's no reason why we wouldn't be exporting where we create competence and capability in the UK and taking that and using it anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the rest of the world, unless local conditions require you to do something and replicate in country. So
well, JLR hasn't become a global business by just focusing on the UK market anymore, is it?
No, and the supply chain that supports it is a global supply chain, and that product basis and even manufacturing for JLR now happens in more than one nation across this continent.
Yeah. Well, just to finish up Ruth, just give us your view of the future. I mean, looking ahead to perhaps 2050, I mean, how do you see, what's your vision for how SMRs are shaping the UK's energy resilience, industrial competitiveness and decarbonisation strategy? What's the rosy picture for you?
Well, look, we have this wonderful opportunity for the UK in that our energy resilience is helped by having homegrown capability, and that's what Rolls Royce SMR is offering in. But we also have this fantastic growth in energy consumption, and therefore the export potential strong. So you see economic and physical resilience, I think, being created by both of those things. The other thing maybe we haven't talked about is application. So we also should be looking more widely than state energy creation. And you can look at heavy industrial applications, data centres, so the likes of hyperscalers or some of the regional developments. You can see in the future that those would easily be powered by a local SMR. So it gives us resilience, I think, to the grid, but it gives us more broadly than that a market that can leverage this UK capability, the competence and strength of Rolls-Royce.
Yeah. Well, finally, and I don't want to leave us on a down, so I'm going to change the word challenges to opportunities. What would you say are your top three opportunities for 2026, and how can the supply chain really help you?
So it's 26 and beyond. I don't think I can just hold those.
All right.
Otherwise, it's a bit, let me just get someone to write this piece of paperwork. It's not quite so exciting. I think picking our team is a big thing over the next few years, and we're out in doing supplier conferences in the UK and Czech Republic right now, asking for companies to get enrolled. And we have a supplier portal. I'd ask anyone who's not enrolled on that's interested to get out there and tell us about yourselves. Readying for delivery. We talked about skills as a great example. Some of those skills take an awful long time to put in place. So that's very on our mind at the moment. And then the one that I'm have the most fun with, I guess, is exciting our customers about what we do, because we are the new kids on the block, and providing that certainty, build certainty philosophy with the strength of the way we're going to go about doing this, and proving the point that we think we're doing something differently and we can make it happen. Yeah. That excitement is the thing that I'm looking forward to most in the next couple of years.
Well, it is, as you say, it is a huge opportunity ahead, huge amount of excitement, and certainly an industry which it does in many ways hold the key to much of the UK's future ambitions. So look, Ruth, thanks so much for joining me today on the podcast to update us on the what is a huge and significant moment underpinning the nation's ambitions. There's a lot of work to do, but it seems I'm confident that you're in the driving seat there. So helping us charge towards that elusive nuclear renaissance. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
It's really a great pleasure, but sadly that's all we've got time for today on the podcast. But there is more in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-pod.com, where you'll find background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. Thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Ruth for signing off in 2026 on the podcast. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.